They thought love could be measured like weight on a scale, like lines on a chart, like data locked in a clipboard. So they let the psychologist sit them down, papers ready, questions sharp, ticking boxes like fate could be reduced to ink. And they smiled. Oh, they smiled like this was proof, as if a set of numbers could crown them soulmates, as if compatibility could be graphed and scored, neat and clinical, like an equation for eternity. But love is not math. It's not logic. It's not a test you can pass. Still, they leaned into the illusion. They thought this was it, a final seal on their fantasy. She held his hand like a verdict was about to bless them. He squeezed back like destiny itself was in the psychologist's pen. But here's the truth. No test admits you can fake answers, you can fake smiles, you can fake the picture of forever. And yet, when the psychologist pressed deeper, when the questions cut closer, the cracks began to hum beneath the surface. They had rehearsed this love, perfect smiles, perfect timing, perfect answers polished until they gleamed, every look rehearsed like lines in a play, every laugh cued on command. They thought the test would be their spotlight, that the questions would expose nothing but harmony, that the chart would prove them flawless. They wanted a certificate of compatibility, framed like a diploma for love. But illusions are fragile, and theirs was cracking. Behind her practiced grin was doubt she buried for months. Behind his steady voice was exhaustion he tried to hide. The test didn't create those fractures, it only magnified them, because love isn't about who you pretend to be under a psychologist's gaze. It's about who you are when no one's scoring you. It's about the arguments that linger, the silences that cut deeper than words, the truth that refuses to stay buried. But illusions are convincing until they shatter. And as the psychologist kept probing, peeling layer after layer, the stage lights flickered, and suddenly what looked like a castle in the clouds began to look more like a house of cards. In one breath, one question, one slip was all it took for the walls to tremble. The psychologist thought it was just a session, questions and answers, patterns and scores, but heaven was listening, because what the test couldn't measure, God already knew. And he doesn't grade on paper. He breaks illusions. One question hit the table like lightning, not complicated, not scientific, just sharp enough to slice through the mask. And in that silence, something cracked. Her eyes shifted. His jaw tightened. The air thickened, heavy, holy, unexplainable, because this wasn't just data anymore. This was revelation. The psychologist scribbled notes, oblivious, but God was rewriting the script. Illusions can fool people and they can fool friends, families, even themselves, but they cannot fool the one who sees deeper than any chart. And so he let the test become a mirror, not of their compatibility, but of their lies, not of their love, but of their performance. And when the mirror shattered, it didn't fall quietly. It split with fire, tearing down every false promise they had built. In that moment, they weren't proving themselves to a psychologist. They were standing trial before the truth. It only takes one answer to break a story, one hesitation, one glance too long, one truth too heavy to keep hidden. The psychologist didn't even notice it at first, but they did. She felt his silence press like a weight. He saw her eyes flicker like a guilty confession, and in that instant, the illusion shattered. The questions kept coming, but the answers weren't smooth anymore. Her words cracked at the edges. His tone sharpened. Smiles faltered. The performance slipped. The perfect couple gone. What sat in those chairs now were two strangers clinging to a fantasy that had just burned in front of them. Compatibility wasn't their crown anymore. It was their curse. Every chart, every note, every calculation wasn't proof of their bond. It was evidence of its collapse. The test hadn't saved them. It had exposed them. And as silence filled the room, it was louder than any argument. They weren't looking at each other with love anymore. They were looking at each other with recognition. Recognition that this was over. Recognition that God had pulled the curtain and revealed the truth. And truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. The psychologist looked down at the notes, maybe thinking this was just another couple cracking under pressure. But this wasn't psychology anymore. This was prophecy, because the test didn't destroy them. God did, not out of cruelty, but out of mercy, because he doesn't let lies live forever. What they called love was only costume. What they called forever was only rehearsal. And when the truth arrived, the play ended. The reckoning was quiet, but it was brutal. Every hidden doubt stepped into the light. Every unspoken resentment found a voice. Every secret fracture screamed to be seen, and there was no illusion left to hold on to. They sat in silence. Two people who once swore they were inseparable, now just strangers in the same room, not lovers, not enemies, just two actors, costumes stripped, staring at the wreckage of a script that could no longer continue. The aftermath wasn't a fight, it wasn't rage, it was emptiness, a silence so heavy it pressed against the walls, the kind of silence that doesn't end with a hug or an apology, the kind of silence that says, "This is finished." And in that silence, they realized God hadn't killed their love. He had killed the illusion of it. And in its ashes, the truth stood unshakable. Here's the truth. Love doesn't need a psychologist's stamp. It doesn't live in charts or questions or data. It lives in silence that feels safe, in arguments that heal instead of scar, in loyalty that doesn't need to be measured because it proves itself every day. And that's why their illusion had to die. The test didn't expose weakness, it exposed performance. It showed that what they had wasn't rooted in spirit, but in staging. They were actors pretending to be soulmates. And God doesn't let that kind of play go on forever, because love isn't theater. It's sacrifice. It's truth. It's messy. It's painful. It's raw. And yet it's real. And when God tore down their illusion, he wasn't punishing them. He was setting them free, free from the weight of pretending, free from the trap of lies they called love. The lesson: you can trick people, you can trick psychologists, you can even trick yourself, but you cannot trick God. He will test what no human test can measure. He will separate what's true from what's false, no matter how beautiful the illusion looks. So when the psychologist tested their compatibility, they thought they were about to be crowned proof of forever. Instead, God stepped in, tore the script in half, and left them sitting in the ruins of what they pretended to be. The psychologist tested compatibility, but God tested reality. And when he did, the illusion burned to ash.